What are kind of your overall takeaways of the rookie QB class at this point?
I'd be interested to hear what you think of Bo Nix because I got the rundown of the 7 possessions he was in here, right? You want to hear him?
Okay, yes, I do. I was critical of Bo Nix in his first start because almost none of his throws came from a solid platform. He was frantic, like he was just flying out of the pocket. But the second start, he really calmed down. Like everything
Yeah.
was from a solid platform. He looked good. And I think from what you're about to tell me, he's quite productive.
Yeah, so 7 possessions, 11 plays, 45 yards, field goal, 10 plays, 56 yards, touchdown. Then a fumble lost on the first snap, which was a miscue, of course. Then 7 plays, 75 yards, field goal in a 2-minute situation. Coming back out of the half, 10 plays, 56 yards, touchdown. And then he starts this week, a couple days ago, 9 plays, 34 yards, field goal, 11 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. I mean, like it's preseason and they're not
Right.
scheming yet. They're not game planning yet. And all of that's valid. But there is something to be said for when you put him in, the offense moves. Now, here's my caveat. It would be alarming if he didn't look good because he had 61 starts in college. He was a multi-year starter at 2 major conference programs. This guy on paper should be as prepared as any quarterback has ever been to come into the NFL based on the amount of reps and the amount of starts that he had in college. To me, because of that, the question has never been, Connor, what he's going to look like in year 1 or year 2. I think to me, the question's always been, what is he going to look like in year 4 or year 5? When the time comes and you have to pay a guy 50 or $60 million a year. That's why I think there's this corollary with Kenny Pickett and Mac Jones, where both those guys look pretty good as rookies. And I think Kenny Pickett had a perfect passer rating for the preseason last year. So,
What?
yeah, somebody raised that to me yesterday and I was blown away. And I had neglected to look it up, but I think he had a perfect passer rating for the preseason last year. He wound up being benched, you know? So, my point I'm bringing up Pickett and Mac is that those guys were sort of, I would say, profiled similarly, where they were both very ready for the pros, but both the question was the ceiling. And I think that's sort of what Bo Nix is fighting against. It's not how ready he's going to be in year 1. It's going to be how much room he has left to grow and whether it's a what you see is what you get situation, you know?
Albert, per NFL Live, Kenny Pickett is the first quarterback in the last 2+ decades to finish the season with a perfect preseason passer rating. Wow.
He got benched. Like how many games did it take him to get benched?
Not that many. I mean, it's the kind of stat that you're not going to soon forget when you hear it. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that when, it's going to be fun being old and educating our kids on the finer points of the game and saying, at one point I lived through Kenny Pickett's perfect passer
2023
rating
preseason.
preseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
I mean, but you know what I'm saying though, like right, like with Mac and Kenny, it was like these guys are incredibly ready, and they were really competent starting quarterbacks as rookies, and there was excitement going into year 2, and then they just sort of leveled off. And so I think that's going to be the question with Bo Nix. Can he level up in year 3, year 4? They have to start him now. Like I don't think there's any question that he's their starter.
I get what Sean Payton is doing. It's like the Parcells thing, but if you're Bo Nix, you're probably looking around and being like, okay, what are you going to do? Jared Stidham? You going to do
Yeah.
Zach Wilson? Good luck,
So
pal.
I think the first 2 picks have been really good too.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I think Caleb, it makes sense based on the way they've ramped him up, how creative they were in creating opportunities for him. Like during the pre-draft process to learn their offense, they were installing with him in the Zoom meetings. I wrote about that this week where those 3 1-hour Zoom meetings, they were putting in formations and motions and cadence and all of that different stuff. They used the 30 visit for that also. And I mean, I think like the biggest thing with Caleb is it's as advertised, right? Jayden, I mentioned I was at Jets the other day. I had someone with the Jets tell me like they were blown away with what they saw with Jayden Daniels when they practiced against them. Like blown away. Obviously, he's another one who's a high volume guy, so he should be ready. I think he had 55 starts in college, just like Bo Nix was a multi-year starter at 2 different major conference programs, so he should be ready. But when I got to see him in person in a practice setting, he just looks so smooth. Everything looks really natural. It's just like he, as a runner, he glides and the way he throws the ball on the run just like looks so natural. It's nothing looks hard for him. And I think there's something to be said for that. So, obviously the numbers tell us not all these quarterbacks are going to make it. JJ McCarthy looked really good, before he got
Right.
hurt. I do think that in the preseason, there's some element of because the other team isn't game planning against you, because you may not be playing against their starters, there's an opportunity for the coaches to kind of game it up a little bit so it can give the young quarterback some confidence. So that's the context, we're looking at them under. But I think even with Drake, like, I think all of them, you see why they were first round picks.
I remember last year texting you during well, you were in the Patriots press box, or maybe you were doing TV in the New England area when CJ Stroud was up there, and
He looked awful.
The Patriots beat the crap out of him. He looked awful in the preseason last year, and Bryce Young looked like we thought he would, right? Bryce
Yeah.
Young looked together. He was orchestrating drives. He was hitting the smart completions. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this is exactly what it was supposed to look like. And our entire perception of everything was flipped upside down. And I'm wondering what quarterback is going to do that, right? Because Jayden Daniels looked awesome. Caleb Williams looked awesome. Bo Nix looked really good and was highly productive. And Michael Penix isn't going to play, so you're going to kind of throw that out. And JJ McCarthy's not going to play this year. So one of these quarterbacks is going to look way better when bullets are live, and one of these quarterbacks is going to look so much worse than we imagine when
And
bullets start to fly.
I think part of that too, Connor, is like it's hard because like the Texans, we wouldn't have said going into the year last year that the Texans had a good situation for CJ Stroud. Nobody would have said that.
Right.
And that wound up being a way better situation than we thought. And we always focus so much on the one player who's got the best situation when it comes to the other 10 around him. I think it's probably Caleb of the guys who's going to play, right?
Right.
It's weird because that's not normally the number one pick, but obviously they traded for the pick, so they weren't the worst team in the league last year. I'd be worried with Jayden Daniels and the tackles there. Terry McLaurin's a really good receiver, but beyond McLaurin, they're a little short. Do they have enough around him? And Bo Nix, the offensive line's been a question mark there. And Garrett Bowles is somebody that they had at least had trade discussions on. And who's Bo Nix going to be throwing to? Judy's gone. Tim Patrick's coming back off of injury. Cortland Sutton's a good player. How good a situation is that? Like the Broncos, for that to be a good situation, would need things to break for them the way they broke for the Texans last year, where like, say, Audric Estime, who's had a really good camp, winds up being a really good pair for Javonte Williams. So they could take the pressure off Bo Nix a little bit. And Bowles has a really good year at left tackle. And Tim Patrick's really good coming back off of injury. And maybe like Troy Franklin emerges as a rookie the same way Tank Dell did last year. Like with the Broncos, I think you need a lot of those things to kind of turn the way that they turned for the Texans last year. Whereas with the Bears, it's like, we know what Keenan Allen is. We know what DJ Moore is. Rome Odunze as a number 3 receiver should be really good. They've invested in the offensive line. It's just, and Shane Waldron did a great job with Geno Smith, so
Right.
I feel like you're guessing less with the Bears than you are with the other guys as far as just what's going to be around them and what it's going to look like.
There's going to be like a 6th round pick that ends up just killing it this year or something like that. Or
Sam
yeah,
Hartman's going to come in for Jayden Daniels and crush it.
boy, I'll tell you what, I was at those joint practices. Jayden Daniels looked good, so did Sam Hartman. Jayden Daniels, though, is throwing people open. I mean, he is. I really thought. I mean, there were coaches that I really trusted that I talked to during the pre-draft process that kept banging the table and saying, "Why aren't we talking about this kid being the number 1 overall pick? It's driving me nuts." A lot of people liked him, but the
I
the
mean,
Caleb Williams hype is
you
real.
know,
We're seeing why.
yeah. I mean, again, like I can't emphasize like how when I was at the Commanders, I couldn't go 5 feet without someone saying something to me about Jayden Daniels. I mean, defensive coaches, it was like you start talking to them about their players, and it's like you have that quarterback over there. You know what I mean? Like, and then I get to the Jets, and like I'm hearing the same thing from Jets people about what he looked like when they practiced against him, and then obviously when they played against him. Like, and if you remember too, I believe that was the rain practice, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so like that was part of the whole equation with Jayden Daniels too. Was like he looks really good in the elements, which as a guy who played in the SEC and the Pac-12 was, I think a natural question with him.